Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Mastering Rod Building Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Faulkner, and I'm honored to have another very special guest with me today. And that is none other than the woman, the myth, the legend, Mary McIntyre Christy. Most of you, if you are enthusiastic rod builders and you have ever heard or seen any social media related to rod building, know exactly who Mary is. But Mary's been a custom rod builder for about 13 years. She is one of the brand ambassadors for the Foundation Outdoor Group and was a brand ambassador prior to that for American Tackle. She's a founder of the decorativestudio.net, which we'll talk about, and you should definitely check out. A great source of rod building dedicated tools and supplies, lessons, all of which are sort of tested and proven. And she's also, and I think this is how we met, the co-founder of the Southern Rod Builders Group on Facebook, although she is co-founder with her husband, Wes. So I don't know that we should be giving him any credit. I mean, he's already hard enough to handle and keep in the penalty box. So I'm tempted to fudge that and say the founder of the Southern Rod Builders Group. But welcome, Mary McIntyre Christy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. One of the things I've come to know about Mary over time and respect is in addition to being the mom of three boys, two of which she gave birth to and one of which she married, that are a full-time job, is she's a busy, busy lady. So I meant to have you on for a while. We couldn't always get it scheduled between our two schedules when we wanted to, but I'm delighted to finally have you here. So thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This is awesome.
I can almost feel myself getting smarter in my decorative thread work, tightening up and getting better just by you being here and listening to your voice. It's like a Pavlovian response because every time I've watched or taken one of your classes, I always learn something to get better. So I always ask my guests, how did you get into fishing and how did you get into rod building?
It's a funny story for me because
Well, I want to hear it.
I totally got into this completely backwards. I actually never fished, but prior to meeting Wes, I had two incidents. One, when I was younger, I went fishing with my dad and my grandpa and my brother on a Holden Beach canal, and we caught the ugliest fish we'd ever seen in my life. We had no idea what it was. Come to find out, it was a toadfish.
That is
And
an ugly
then
fish.
it's a super ugly fish. But then the second incident, I was a teenager and we went fishing on a headboat, which the guy that I was between my mom and my dad, but then this random guy kind of like weaseled himself in between me and my dad, and he was drinking and all
Mhm.
he threw up all over me. I quit after that. I was like, nope, I just I
You
went
know,
upstairs.
it's so funny when you said incidents, there have been two incidents. I was like, allegedly, like, oh my gosh, it sounds like I'm reading a legal brief or something or the court proceedings. But those were actually the toadfish is borderline. Like, I kind of think it's cool to catch a fish you haven't seen before in a new species. And it takes more and more these days to get me to go to my Dr. Bob Ship book and be like, what fish is this of the Gulf of Mexico? But the headboat puking thing, I thought it was going to go another way. A lot of people on their first headboat trip, they eat a hot dog and drink too much, and they're the ones who get the diesel fumes and don't feel so well. But this guy literally pukes on you.
He literally puked all over me. So
Well,
it was
somehow that seems like a fitting intro to motherhood and to the rod building experience thus far.
right at 16. I was like, what the hell? But
Well, I'm
I
glad you stuck with it. Oh, so you had the two incidents. It sounds like you've been through counseling. You're all reconciled and good with the incidents. So something got you back trying this again.
well, it actually was Wes because
Okay,
I re-met him. I actually met him in middle school. We knew each other in middle school.
really?
But yeah, we call him my stalker. It's actually a running joke because in Rock Hill we had a bunch of middle schools, only two high schools, and they built a new middle school, filtered a bunch of us into the new one, and they were supposed to build the new high school before we got to ninth grade, and they didn't build it. So we were together for 2 years and then we got split up. And then for
Okay.
12 years, he couldn't find me, but he was looking for me. He found me on Facebook
Creepy.
finally. It,
Yeah. So just for the record, he wasn't the one who weaseled between your parents and or your
no,
mom and uncle and
he
puked
was
on you.
not.
Okay. All right.
I was a full
Just
grown man
checking.
that
I'm
did
not. I
that.
just want to make sure I got my facts straight.
He found me on Facebook in like 2011 and
Oh,
we
this
started,
is absolutely stalking.
yeah, stalking. I was one of the last people to get on Facebook because during that time, Facebook when it first came out was just for people that went to college. I didn't go to college because Mary's previous life was dancing, singing, acting. I was a musical theater kid.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
I was dancing since I was 3.
How did I
I
not know this? Okay,
Yes,
this explains so much because you clearly have a totally like artistic, creative side. I would have
yeah.
never guessed the music and the dance and this. Okay, that's it. I'm getting you. We're gonna be as we record this right now. It's literally hours before, just a few days before the 2024 ICRBE.
Hmm.
I'm bringing a guitar. I'm going to make you sing. So you might as well pick the songs you want to sing right now. We're going to get some of Lori Baird's Moonshine. All inhibitions will be gone, and you will be singing. And it will be my honor to share the stage or bar stool with you.
Oh man, don't do that to me. But
Okay. All right. Well, that doesn't sound like a stage
I mean,
personality. You're supposed to be craving attention and dying for the microphone.
yeah. Well, that used to be Mary. Okay,
Okay.
but
Okay.
when I got
Wes stocked all that creative energy right out of you.
no, it all gets dumped into the rods at this point.
Interesting.
Um, he met me in 2011. His family, avid fishermen. They
Okay.
went to the beach all the time. They took me fishing. He actually introduced me to rod building, which
Because
is
was he
funny.
he was he a captain or a mate or used to work on boats or something like? Am I making that up?
No,
Okay.
no, he didn't used to. He started his business with his grandfather,
Okay.
and it was like 2 years old, so like 2009, 2010 when he did his.
Okay.
And I remember he took me up to the rod building room. Prior to that, I was like, why would people buy a custom fishing rod? It makes no sense. Like, why don't they just go to Walmart? I literally said this, and it's such a ridiculous statement because
That's hilarious to me.
I am,
You're not saying that anymore, by the way.
no, I'm not saying that anymore. I'm always like, but people find it funny that I was of that mentality.
Right. I do.
And, and so we were up there talking. He was putting epoxy on, and then we're all chit chatting. And he literally looks at me and he goes, "You know what? You're really creative. I think that you would be able to figure this out." And he threw a book across the room to me, and I'm like, "Okay, what is this?" And I flip it over, and it's Billy's decorative wraps book.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like, "I can't figure out. We can do chevrons, we can do diamonds. I don't know anything past that. I think that you would be really good at doing this." And I'm like, "I don't even know what the butt of a rod is right now. Are you serious?" I
I've
start
had two incidents. There was a toadfish and
in a drunk.
an emesis, yeah, a puking incident.
Like, come on, man. But I sat down with
And the
that
book
book.
she's referring to is called Decorative Wraps by Billy Vavona. You can probably get it through the NURBS or Northeastern Rod Builder website. I know they sell copies through Mud Hole Tackle and probably some other places. So just search Decorative Wraps by Billy Vavona if you want to see this book. But keep going. Sorry.
But I flipped through the book and I'm like, I have no idea what this is trying to tell me. And I started to get online and
Hmm.
there's no information out there about decorative wraps at that point.
Right. Right.
And so luckily his grandfather was a hoarder. He had all the rod makers, he had all the books, all so I sat down with Dale Clemens thread art, Billy's book, and like two different tutorials that were in
Yeah.
rod maker, and
Yeah.
I sorted through all the information. So I literally got brought
Literally
in the
self-taught.
building,
Yeah.
self-taught, and was brought in just to make things look pretty. That was my job. Wes
Okay.
built the rod, I made it look good. That was my job.
Interesting.
And over time, that dynamic has shifted
Yeah, I was
because
gonna say, my how the turns have tabled.
yeah, because now Wes is HVAC, so he's never home. So I
Right.
had to learn how to do everything by
Right.
myself.
Yeah. You can build the whole rod now for sure.
I can build a whole rod now, I still ask him because he's my mentor. He's the one who taught me. So I'm always like, is this right? And he's like, yeah, why are you second guessing yourself? And I'm like, because,
Yeah.
why not ask your second opinion on this? So
Sure. Sure.
that's how I got into rod building, was through him and him throwing a book at me.
That's so cool. And I think you were the first person I've met who, with the exception of maybe Tom Morgan's wife, you're the first person I met who built rods before they really fish.
Yeah.
That's not a common path. Well,
Mm-mm.
so this and the creative background is so interesting to me because you recently I follow you on all your social media platforms. So I think I'm following you on TikTok and on Facebook and on Instagram. And one of the reasons I love to follow you, you mentioned Rodmaker. I mean, which golly, to have those books, if you had to pick two books, those two books, and then have all the back issues of Rodmaker, like what a great resource to start with, right? It
Mm-hmm.
also sort of helps me understand two of the things you do really well that I like. Well, there's a lot of things, but one of the things is you're just very creative. You try a lot of different things. You do stuff. and sometimes it's just like a riff or a adaptation or an evolution of a technique. Like you recently had a thing on where you were marbling with bead chain.
Hmm.
I know all about marbling, know how to do it. I know people who are good at it. I know what I don't like about the marbling. I don't like. It's fascinating. I would have never in a million years taken the bead chains and did what you did with it, but such a cool look, right?
Yeah.
I think about you're so famous. Well, you're famous to me and to a lot of rod builders for the sugar skull rod, right? And
Yeah.
this is one of the things that you shared on. So this is a rod where Mary not only she had a very specific decorative theme all throughout the rod, which included embossed or engraved or embossed leather grips, which were also painted and tinted and stained, and the wraps. And then you've done your beautiful closed decorative thread wraps and put things on there. I remember you put some buttons on a rod, I think for maybe for a gunnery sergeant or a Marine or somebody. There's a military theme rod. You've put, I think maybe the sugar skull rod had some diamonds or crystals
It,
or something on it. Like it's such an interesting, and it, I think maybe, you were jokingly saying, I want to check with my second opinion to make sure I'm right. The fact that you came into this from the creative side, from rod building, and didn't have the baggage of having looked at a bunch of factory rods or seen what a bunch of other custom rod builders were doing. I mean, that's so fascinating. Obviously, you have a very creative mind, but maybe that's where some of these innovations and pushing the boundaries and trying different things comes from. Is because you're not stuck in the mud with all the way everybody's been doing everything, and you didn't learn it in exactly the way the rest of us learned it. I mean, maybe that's obviously combined with your talent and your sort of hard work and diligence. That's fascinating to me. That potentially explains a lot, because I love how creative you are about things. And to that end, this also makes a lot of sense to me that you have. So if you don't mind, let's talk about, if you go to the decorativestudio.net, or you'll be better able to tell people all the various channels they can access your content through. But Mary has done a really good job of doing very practical, very easy to understand, step-by-step lessons, either for specific wraps, a lot of times for specific wraps, but also for certain techniques, for layout and thing like that. And I know you're someone I came to when I was thinking about starting my YouTube channel and being like, hey, what do you think? Is this useful content? Would anybody want to see it? Because you had started the Southern Rod Builders, which is a great group. You can find that on Facebook. Just Google the Southern Rod Builders. There's a 117 question quiz about rod building and fishing you have to pass in order to get into the group. I'm just kidding. All you have to do is be nice, and be nice to everybody, and it's a great resource to learn. But talk to me about the lessons and how you got into that. And now that I'm realizing you sort of learned all this by yourself in a vacuum, obviously you would understand what people need to know and what were the hard parts for you and what came intuitively and what like took you a while to figure out. Maybe that's why you're such an effective instructor. But talk to me about the lessons and the stuff you teach and how people can get to that if they want to.
so the courses for the decorative wraps actually
Yeah.
started after we were doing Southern, because
Okay.
Southern, we started doing live videos once a
Mm-hmm.
week.
Okay.
And then we had to dial it back because, everybody got busy, but I started doing live videos on Wednesdays, and I
When
called
she
them
says
wrap.
everybody got busy, she means I had kids. That's what she
Yeah,
means. She had kids.
I had a newborn and a 3-year-old. So, it was getting a little hectic, but um I started Wednesdays was wrap Wednesdays, and I would always teach something about decorative wraps on those
Yep.
days. And everybody could, nobody knew how to do a chevron. Nobody could understand
Right.
how to space out, do the taper offset spacing,
Right.
how they were having dramas with their threads being too loose, too tight,
Yeah.
all of
Yep.
these things. And I thought, somebody needs to teach this, So I actually decided, all right, this may be a crazy idea. I don't know if it's going to go well or not, but I put a couple of courses together, had them
And I
set
should
up.
say, this is pre-COVID. A lot of people were sitting around working from home with nothing to do, and started putting some guilty. That's what gave me the to be able to put some of my stuff out there. But this was pre-COVID. This was like full on. You just sat down and started making these courses.
Yeah, it was 2000. I think that was like, it was the year that my first one was born when I got the first one out. So like 2015-ish, I had
Okay.
the
Yeah.
first course put out. And I actually remember I had edited and done all this stuff, and I was in the hospital and I pushed it out that day because I brought my laptop with me. But the
Only
course
you.
the course went over so well. People were like, "Oh man, it answered everything." Because I literally sit you down. I start you with, here's how you measure a blank. Here's how you're going to, I always write my patterns out because it's easier for me to keep up with.
Sure.
Here's how to mark it on the blank. Here's the spacing. If your blank's
Yeah.
different, refer to this spacing chart, blah, blah,
Right.
blah. And we go thread for thread. Like there's no
Yeah.
skipping. It's literally, okay, you're going this way now. Now you're going this way, showing hacking techniques. So, it would take me 60, 80 hours to get through all the recording and, doing the wrap and then editing everything and then the voiceovers, but they get it in this perfect little sandwich box between text and video that however they learn, they can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the thing that I think is so good about them, and they're extremely well done and an outstanding value. If you're interested, I guess they can. How's the best way to access them? Decorativestudio.net,
So
or go to the Facebook group, or
all the courses are on threadcentral.net and they're under,
threadcentral.net. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had it at a Teachable website, but when Dave and I got in our collaboration, we moved everything to Thread Central. So
And
all the
she's referring to David Boyle, the Aussie Drongo. So David has also been a guest of the podcast and a brilliant mind and sort of finding a way to put this into easily digestible and understandable educational content, right? So yeah, your lessons are very good. They're very thorough. I just sort of assumed you used to be an elementary school teacher or something, and that's why you could make these. But now I realize you had to learn this all for yourself, and it's sort of fresh, and so you remember this, and you could put it out there. You do a very good job. I think the lessons, and I'm an old dog who's done all this stuff, but I was always fascinated. I remember the first time I ever watched you rap. I'll say this, if you've seen Mary's work, then you understand what I'm talking about. She is meticulous. She has an incredible eye for color. And when she is finished with a wrap, they are flawless. They are straight. They are square. If they're supposed to be square, they are filled. They are and the amount of time she spends packing, and I'm just telling you, she is executing work at an extremely high level. So that in and of itself is worth respect, and I admire you for it. But you do a lot of things differently than other people do, which again probably gets to the self-taught thing. So I'll tell you first one of the things people struggle with, and you already mentioned it, thread tension, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were sort of taught the only way to get all these threads in there is to pull them as tight as you can. And I mean, how many wraps have I done where the threads are so tight I could play them like a piano string or something, right? And then I watch you rap and I'm like, wait, this isn't possible. This can't possibly work. She's got no thread tension. But then you wind up with this completely full, completely packed, completely closed wrap. It's got no places where you've nicked a bunch of fuzzies from trying to pack these tight threads, and you're never going to have your I think of you every time I see someone post hey, I did this thing and I tied it off and I finished it, and now it's pulled the tie off loops in, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. Someone's got to learn this hard lesson. Talk to me about the thread tension a little bit, though, because that's something you kind of arrived at on your own, and I don't know how much you want to talk about. I know people can get this from going to watch you rap live at a foundation outdoor group sponsored event or any number of rod building events, but talk to me about the popsicle stick and the carpet tape and the thread tension and all the sort of Mary Christy tricks that you've come up with and teach people now.
The Maryisms, if you will.
Maryisms, hey, you call it whatever you want. All I can tell you is they work, and anything she's teaching, she's done them 100 times before, and it works. And if you follow the instructions, it will work. And I hate when I like to cook, and occasionally you get someone who give you a recipe and then they have 3 ingredients. It's like, dude, I can't even Google that and nothing comes up. Thanks, Martha Stewart. Where am I supposed to get the ground cardamom seeds harvested in spring, right? But you sell any of the stuff that's hard to get or that where a real specific brand matters, and you make it really easy. It's all in one place. But how did you just sort of developed all that stuff when it was your job to make rods pretty?
So for a long time, see, I always stay in the beginner mindset of where the beginners struggle because I know how long it took me to figure it out. Right. And I was one of those people that was, my wraps were not pretty when I first started. They were crooked. This
is also hard for me to believe, but yeah.
I've still had my first wrap because Wes won't let me cut it off because his philosophy is you need to see how far you've come. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. But we're trying to use the light glare. We were trying to use tape and a thing to draw lines down a thing. Eventually, Wes and his dad built me a decorative wrap jig. And I started using it to draw the lines down. And immediately, wraps started getting straighter.
Yeah.
They were just, you had that line to follow. I was
Right.
using China marker at that point in time because that was the only thing that was available that everybody said
That's what the book said to use.
supposed to use that. So I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
kept disappearing or rubbing off of my threads. And so
Right.
I eventually landed into paint pens, and I
Right.
was like, it stays there. It doesn't chip. It doesn't cause any issues with the epoxy.
Right.
Painting tools. It was eventually I found this. It's a mechanics pick that I've just rounded off the edge of it, made it like a pointed round thing. And
Is
that's
that what
my
it is? Your little tool with the orange or yellow handle?
yeah.
Okay. I don't even know what a mechanics pick is, even as you tell me that, but it's interesting. Yeah.
It's just I mean, it's this big. It's got
Yeah.
a little orange handle, and originally it was this super sharp just point, and we just
Okay.
rounded off the point, and I can move threads all over the place.
Yeah.
The popsicle stick and the duct tape, when I first started following the book, I was
Right.
doing like a paper towel laid with the popsicle so it wouldn't damage the blank or the
Right.
grips, and taping
Yada,
it
yada,
down.
yada. Right.
And I was like, well, why are we doing the pops or why are we doing the paper towel? That just seems excessive. It's
Right.
making it bigger.
Hey, that
And
was state
so
of the art in 1979. What are you talking about?
it was the way to do it.
Right.
And so I just started taping the popsicle to the blank. And I
Yeah.
was using masking tape at that point because we all use masking tape.
Sure.
But I had one customer's, he wanted a wrap on his, it was not a rebuild, nothing, just can you add a wrap to it? Cool. I taped it to the cork grip like I normally did with the masking tape. When I went to remove it, it pulled out a chunk of the cork, and I went, from that day on,
Yeah.
I never use masking tape again. It's always painter's tape. So,
Okay.
because it won't stick to anything,
Right. Yeah. 100%.
And then came across, like, I was having problems because, you get these mountains, footballs that were forming on the tape anchor, which then causes the thread underneath to compress, and then it comes loose. So I was like, there's got to be something better.
Right.
Found double-sided duct tape, and that's like everything that I was going, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way.
It was just solving a problem you were going through as you were learning. Yeah. That's fascinating.
I mean, so all of that stuff that I use, circle templates, the packing tools, paint pens, the duct tape, the jigs, like all of the actual tools that I use, I sell them. They're on threadcentral.net. And, the jigs, one of the reasons why I continue to keep making the jigs is because a lot of people don't have them in stock.
No, they don't. And they haven't always been of equal level of precision and quality over the years. Yours are very, very good. I still have one original from Clemens Custom Tackle that I used for most of it. And then I have not been satisfied with any of the others I've tried, but the one that I got from you, I think it's been a couple of years now at either ICRBE or ICAST, is outstanding. We were just talking before we started recording today that I got to get a couple more from you at ICAST. I got to put one in my travel kit, and I never do a layout without the circle template. Obviously it works great, but you got to have the right one. You got to have the one that has a little flex in it,
Yeah, and
and
you
all the
can't
little
push
tricks
it too
about
far.
mark towards the butt end of the template so you don't scrape the paint pen off. I mean, there's just I'm not going to give away the store here, but I will say that your lessons are really good. There's a bunch of really practical, easy tips and tricks that once you get it once, it's like an aha moment, and I highly recommend them. They're worth checking out if you want to, because it can be intimidating. It can be, scary, and it happens, and it leads me to another thing I love about what you do. And I'm coming across like a fanboy on your social media, but I do follow you, and I will like and comment, do whatever. And I dig seeing what other rod builders are doing, especially people that are more creative than me, because I got inspiration out of your bead chain marbling, but I would have never, if you let me build for 1,000 years, I never would have tumbled to that. Right. So I really appreciate you sharing that inspiration with the rest of us. But you also show your goofs and your fails. And in a world of social media and this online life where everything's perfect and every day's great, and you never see a photo where we're not posed and perfect with a beautiful background or whatever, right? You're not afraid to get on there and be like, y'all, I completely botched the chaos grip. Here's what happened. Here's what went wrong. I love that. No, I mean, because that's what it's really like, right? Like I screwed something up last night because I was tired and in a hurry and trying to get it done before bed, and it happens, right? And so I kind of love that you share that stuff, because it's very easy to look at the level of your work and be like, oh, it's so easy for her. Everything's perfect. She's just like a savant. She's just gifted. But then you turn around and it's like, yeah, I totally got this wrong. The pattern's on the side instead of the top, or I made this math mistake in my layout. Like, that's real. I love that you keep it real, and that's part of the journey. Although I have to say, the other thing that I always think of you for, and again, you'd have to have seen Mary's work because it's really, really, and you must pack for hours and hours because it's
Oh yeah.
literally like geometrically perfect and to your eye looks perfect when you're done. But you'll cut a wrap off, man. Like you've had a couple where you're like, you posted it on Tuesday, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And I post, and then on Wednesday, here's the snake skin where you cut it off, and I'm like, no, why'd you cut it off? It was beautiful. But talk to me
Yeah.
about that a little bit too, about the kind of this philosophy of sharing your mistakes and what you're learning, and even at your level where you're executing at a very high level, if it's not right or it's not what you want or it's not perfect, being willing to kind of cut it off and walk away from it because you seem to do that more than most people I know. And it's hard for me to watch sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm
I
still trying to
mean,
get mine to look like the ones you're cutting off.
that's what everybody says to me. They're like, if I could do what you just cut off, and I'm like, I get it, guys. A lot of times there's not anything technically wrong with it,
Right.
but I don't like it, and
Okay.
if it's something that I'm building or if I had a vision, I had something
Hmm.
that I wanted it to do and it's not meeting up to my standard,
Yeah.
slice,
Yeah.
and I share the good, the bad, and the ugly. I always tell people that
I love that.
because we are not perfect. We
No,
are
we're
human.
not.
Like the other day, I'll go ahead and tell them myself, not I screwed up the chaos script, which you've already mentioned that, but
Well, I saw it on your social media today or yesterday.
Elsa, when I was gluing the grips
Oh
and
yeah,
the
the
real
snowflake
together,
grips or whatever. Yeah.
forgot to put the hood down. And Wes got home early that day and he was watching the video and he was like, Mary, please tell me you put the hood down. I ran. I was in the middle of cooking dinner. I went, holy crap, took off, ran to the garage. Wes is laughing, cackling, following me. I had glued the hood to the real seat. And I was like, what are we going to do? And he's like, calm down. I got this. He got the heat gun, put it on low setting because I had done it like 3 hours
Yeah,
ago.
that's good. That's good. That's good. It's still
And
possibly salvageable.
we fixed it. It's fine. It works. It's
That needs
great.
to be your next online course: how to fix various mess ups, because we all make them. You'd
We
hit
all do
everybody
it.
if you
I was
taught that.
Yeah, I was telling Mark Krause what I did, and he was like, "Oh, that's nothing. I glued a real seat upside down." I mean, he went down the
Yeah.
list of stuff that he screwed up, but I was like, "I know, it's just funny." I'll tell people I've got the video of me freaking out, going, "Oh my
Yeah.
God!" I haven't
Yeah.
posted it because I wanted to finish also so they could laugh at me.
I'll
But
never forget several years ago, I was building a fly rod with a guy who wanted a real custom carbon fiber grip with some different colors and all this stuff. And so sometimes I'll go to Ron Weber at Southwest Custom Rods and be like, Ron, he's got an incredible collection of wood and acrylic and all this different stuff. And I can do that stuff, and I have done it, and I actually kind of enjoy doing it. But when you haven't been turning much, like to get out the tools and sharpen them and find all your mandrels and stuff and get it's just like it's so much easier. He does such high quality work, and I can just like send an email and it shows up the next week at my house, right? And I love the Limkey seats and all this. So I put together this fancy. It was fly. It was like black and gold and orange and red, and he did the perfect acrylic that was a match, whatever. And I took some pictures of it, carbon fiber fighting butt with a nickel silver plate. Like, I mean, there's some hard, like you get one crack at this, you got to get it right type stuff to execute on that rod. Nailed it. I was so proud of myself. Put some pictures up there, and I get this private message from Ron. He's like, "So is that glued up or is that just press fit?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." Thankfully, it's press fit. He's like, "Yeah, dude, your threaded barrel's upside down." And I was like, "Oh hell, I didn't even know it was right or wrong on a Limkey." And sure enough, I checked, and I was like, "Damn, it is upside down." Like I thought I was paying attention, but we all do it, right? Like it happens. Nothing
I
like
did that
taking
on the
photos
Limkey
to
too.
let the world catch you at your mistakes too, right?
Well, and I don't mind because there a lot of times we look at these people that inspire us,
Right,
anybody, and you go,
right.
oh, they never mess up, they never mess up. And I'll never get to that level. I'll never be able to
I don't
reach
think any
that.
of us do. Yeah,
And, we put them on this high chair and we
right,
expect nothing wrong with them. And I'm
right,
like, no, this is real. This is what happens. Like, yes, we do
right,
some awesome stuff. Yes,
right.
I'm gonna slice off wraps and make everybody mad. Yes, I'm gonna accidentally
I didn't
glue a
say
seat.
mad. Now you're
Yeah,
saying mad. Like,
right.
come on, that's provocative. I'm not angry at you. I'm just wistful. I'm just what might have been. I just feel like watching a perfectly good, we've lost a lot of good raps out there, Mary. I don't,
I have
you
probably
know,
cut over 100 off, honestly, to like just
oh my,
I
for
mean,
those of you who are only listening and not watching, my eyes just bulged and I threw up a little bit in the back of my throat. No, it'd be one thing if they had technical flaws, right, or they weren't pretty. But I will say this: there's a few that you've cut off that I was like, man. But then the second version, when you redid it and posted it, was actually better.
Yeah.
So you're also not afraid to experiment. And I think if you experiment, some's going to go bust, right? Like it's not
Mhm.
always going to be right. So, I really have this topic on my mind. I get in this argument with people like, can you build a better rod than you can buy from a factory on your first attempt? And my answer is unequivocally yes, if you focus on all the little steps and you're willing to pull it off and do it again if it's not exactly right. You're willing to start over if it's not exactly right. So part of why I'm landing on this and highlighting it is not that you make a lot of mistakes, because you don't, but the fact that you're willing to say it's just not right, or I'm just not happy. Because I know from experience that when you're thinking about that and you're in a hurry or you're tired, or some rods just don't go easy. Like some of them are great and they're a pleasure to build, and then it seems like some of them it's like, this rod is going to be the death of me. And sometimes
Yeah.
you're just like, I'm done. Like I'm done with redos on this particular stick that I'm not even getting paid enough for from this person who's just going to break it and I'm going to have to rebuild it. This inner dialogue we go through, or at least I go through. Maybe I'm just revealing what a psycho I am. But every time then, if I round a corner, I just say, it's good enough. It's good enough. And I move on. That's all I can ever see in that rod. That's all I think about. I regret it. And I wish I had the sort of tenacity and patience and diligence to just tear it off and do it again, because that's what makes it better. When you are your own unflinching quality control department of one and you're willing to do whatever it takes, then yes, as long as you're willing to practice and try more than once, you can build it. Never mind surface prep and proper guide layout, all these various things that can make it better, that in a mass produced environment, guide prep, whatever it is, doesn't often get done. I do think it's fascinating that you're willing to do that. And I applaud the fact that you do actually make a better on your second attempt, which I can't always say is the case with me. Sometimes I take it off and I'm like, this isn't as good as the first one. Now I'm really tired of messing with this. I don't want to go do it again the third time. But um, one of the things I think you do really well, and you're one of the first, and of course, there's a lot of us, I would put myself in this category, like I can copy it once somebody else has done it, but I'm not really good about creating it in the first place. That's just kind of not my creative strength or mind. When I think of really bright colors and fades that I wouldn't necessarily think of going together, I think of a lot of your work. And now there's a lot more people. I feel like there's a lot more people doing colors in your spectrum and your range, these very bright wraps with colors you might not necessarily see together. Talk to me about that. Like, do you have a process for color selection, or is this just kind of your artistic eye? I mean, I've seen you get a piece of art or a piece of fabric, or you'll be inspired by something. I'm having a hard time calling something to mind. Like, how do you go about picking these crazy colors that maybe wouldn't necessarily go together on the color wheel, but then when you see them, they're really, really good. Like I'm thinking of the sugar skull wrap as being an example. Some of these like really vibrant pinks and blues and purples and chartreuses and greens, and then I think you do such a good job with black and white and contrast, and sort of just a little bit of separation or contrast can make colors and the shading and everything else pop. It's shocking what one thread in the right place can do. Like, is that just trial and error, or are you setting about to do that, or how do you put these colors together and get that eye for contrast?
So initially, a lot of that was trial and error, trying to figure
Okay.
out, because most where I get all my color inspirations, I will, like you said, I'll find like a pair of leggings that has this crazy
Okay.
design on it, a men's
Yep.
tie.
Yep.
Nature has great stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
also get on
Yeah, I'm a fan of
Google.
that nature stuff.
It looks like the wood
Mother
duck.
Nature, she's doing good work.
She does great work, and nothing, clashes. Everything
Right.
looks. But I'll get on Google Images and I'll type in color
Mm-hmm.
palettes or color schemes.
Mm-hmm.
And if a customer's like, I want something with blue, but I don't really care what the other colors are, I'll go find the most challenging ones and go, here's ABC. Which one of these do you like the best? And they'll
Interesting.
and I always challenge myself. Like, I mean, granted,
Mm-hmm.
yes, you could do blue, white, gray, blue, and do the basics, and it's going to look good. But I always like to do the ones that you wouldn't think to put together, because it's
Mm-hmm.
more of a challenge to balance those colors.
Right.
The other thing is when I'm doing
I'm
my
realizing now, between the cutting them off, between picking the hard colors, you're just a sadist. You're basically a glutton for punishment. You like to punish Mary. That's what this is all about.
It really is. It really is a little bit of punishment. It's always like you can
I'm
do that.
adding you marrying Wes to that pile. You married your stalker. That's punishment. Like that can't be an easy road. You just like the hard way, I guess.
Everything's the hard way with me.
That's right. That's right.
But when it comes to like figuring out where to put those colors in the patterns, it's all about contrast. Like if
Yeah.
you have to make sure, like with the sugar skulls, all I always put my colors into hot colors,
Hmm. Hmm.
category and cool color categories, and
Right.
then figure out which one of those two is going to make the most oomph or pop against each other, and you just
Hmm.
shoot in that direction.
Interesting.
Um, but it's all, and when you're picking your patterns, you always have your pattern. Your pattern
Hmm.
typically is what you want to stand out the most. So you,
Right.
if you've got a really bright color, you're going to put it into the pattern, and then the other colors are going to come behind it so that it makes it stand out. But I always tell people, they're always like, well, how do you work black and white into it? And I'm like, they're neutrals. Black
Yeah.
and white goes with everything. So if
Right.
you're doing I do a lot of the rainbow, like pumping as many colors in as I can. If
And
I
that's the perfect way to describe it. Yeah.
I just am always trying to get like the sugar skulls themselves. Every single one of those had somewhere between 15 to 18 different colors in them.
Mm.
And I did a kaleidoscope sometime last year. It had
Hmm.
21. And, and that's just me just being crazy. That's the Alice side. That's where the nickname came from for Alice. But I black and white or contrast. If I'm doing a rainbow, I'm going to push that into the background and make the
Yeah.
pattern black and white so it stands out against everything.
Yeah, well, you do it really well, and you clearly have a good eye for it. And thank you for that because I learn a lot looking at your reps, right? And I think your mastery of shading, your mastery of content, contrast, and your mastery of proportion. And I know that sounds simple, but with this pattern, you're deciding how big to make the pattern on the blank. And I've occasionally seen people do incredible work when they're working with an inch and a half diameter jig stick, but then you give them a fine diameter blank and they're lost, right? And
Yeah.
there's some sort of like rote memorization there. One of the things I observe in your work is I feel like you're able to sort of keep that proportion and that scale and move it around in length and diameter of blanks and stuff like that. Is that all in the layout, or are you is that design element kind of from your artistic eye too, or what would you attribute that to?
Well, being able to take, so the Sugar Skull series again, those were three completely different size rods. One
Hmm.
was almost a 20, the other one was a 15, and then another one was smaller than that. I think it was like 10 or 11.
Yeah, it was a
And
little, right,
they all had to have the same pattern because they were all sugar skulls. So I had to
right.
do math to sort this through,
Hmm.
because one of them, the reason why the sugar skull was born is that blank was bigger than the pattern could give me spacing for at that time.
Interesting.
And I just randomly threw in a diamond as the secondary pattern. And I went, oh, okay, that's how you can do that. And that's when I started putting like patterns together and started all these double patterns to come up with these patterns on the sides and stuff. But taking
Okay,
a,
well, you beat me to that too. I was going to ask you about that because I feel like I wasn't even really that aware of the side pattern, main pattern. To me, these wraps were all just kind of main pattern
mhm.
until and I'm sure other people have done it too. When I first sort of paid attention, was like, oh, interesting. We're worried about the side pattern now. That was sort of an outgrowth of the size of that blank, huh?
Yep,
It's
completely.
interesting.
But taking like the Elsa has the same, she's got the impossible star on her, and I've done that one two other times. This one, I didn't think it was going to work because it was only 4 passes, which means that there's only 4 threads in some of the
Tiny.
actual pattern lines. It's
Right.
tiny. It's not
Yeah.
something you should technically put on an 8 millimeter blank. But I had this vision. I was like, it
Right.
looks like the snowstorm. Like I've got to do it. And
Right.
I going into it, I thought I'm going to cut this thing off, but it worked. But that one was literally a packing nightmare. I highly don't recommend it because every
Yeah,
pack.
I'm listening to you talk a little bit. I'm like, you're not necessarily making a big case for making me want to try these things. If they're hard for you and you're saying they're a nightmare, I'm like, I'm staying away.
The impossible star on an 8 millimeter blank is a nightmare. I don't recommend it. You put it on a 15 or a 16 diameter, it's fine.
Totally
You're gonna
manageable.
be
Yeah.
good. That's manageable. But
Yeah.
shrinking patterns down to smaller blanks is absolutely super hard. And a lot of
Right.
times I tell people pick the simpler patterns. Don't go crazy. Don't
Right.
do what I do.
Yeah.
Do a snowflake, do a spider, do a simple sparkler. It's all going to look really good when you stick to just having that one focus on
I
those
actually
small.
think some people don't always understand what they're doing, right? Like if you're in the Midwest somewhere and all you're building is bass rods and walleye rods and ice rods, and you see someone on the West Coast doing these crazy wraps, or someone on like you on in South Carolina near the coast doing a saltwater rod, it's possible you might not understand that blank's an inch in diameter, and you're just like, oh, I could fit that on my little, 3/8 inch blank. No,
Nope,
not
you're not
necessarily,
going
right? So it's great advice though, keep this as it gets smaller, keep the pattern simpler. And you see that stuff, you can only fit a weave of so much size and complexity on a finer diameter blank. I personally think, there's a diameter below which tigers, dragon scales, a lot of these things get really hard. It's just you don't have much canvas to work with, right? So
right.
um yeah,
It
that's
gets
that's
lost.
fascinating.
Because I always tell my students, yes, you see me do crazy stuff, right? Get it. But you don't want to spend 8 to 10 hours doing a wrap, packing it, and have all this meticulous cross points and chaos going on, and nobody can understand what you put on there.
Right.
You don't want to spend 8 to 10 hours where they have to get a magnifying glass to see
Right.
what it looks like,
I personally don't want to spend 8 to 10 hours, period. Like my eyes hurt, I have a headache, and my hands hurt from packing. Just you mentioning 8 to 10 hours, I'll tell you. Now you're a lot younger than me, but still, like a little bit of that goes a long way for me.
Well, 8 to 10 hours broken up. I never get to sit
Yeah,
straight and work on it because my eyes go
yeah,
cross-eyed too, and it's
yeah.
like nope, and thumbs get sore. Ain't like it's
Oh
just.
yeah,
But yeah,
interesting. You also have done some different some different techniques, but you also work in some different mediums. Like you've done some crazy grip things. You're really into the EVA grips now. You've done leather grips and done art and painting on the leather grips. Like where does that inspiration come from? Is that sort of project specific, or are you toying around with these techniques on other things that aren't rod building and you decided to bring it into rod building? Or how does that all come together? Is it just happy accident, or
the leather was a pure just random 2 a.m. thought. Because I
okay?
thought, how cool would it be to do a leather and lace rod? Like that
Mm,
that was the mindset behind it. And so I was like, I want to learn how to do leather. So I dove into the whole hand
okay,
tooling, carving, doing all that
yeah,
stuff. And that's the sugar skulls.
right,
The EVA, so like this year for me personally, prior to last year, I've been just mainly doing decorative wraps
hmm,
and, doing themed rods, but a lot of leather
right,
work. And I was like, I want to get away from the leather because I don't
okay,
want to be a one-trick pony. I
right,
want to expand my knowledge. And
hmm,
I have in the past played around with metal inlays on wood grips. They actually were for a challenge build and never finished, but they're there. I started wood burning this year. I started with the
mm,
EVA inlays this year because I want to keep pushing myself to keep learning
sure,
stuff I didn't know prior.
yeah,
And it's just the EVA inlays have become like this super fun project. But
yeah,
I had a bunch of kids rods and rods that dictated I needed to put EVA on it. So that's why
right,
it's been so much of that lately.
right.
But and then I've got that wood grip for that 2/8 that I'm building, which that one's probably going to make me scream bloody murder in the garage wrapping those guides. But
I was gonna say wrapping the tip section of a 2/8, and I've been there, done that. It ain't no fun, but may
I'm,
the Lord
I'm
bless you and keep you, make His face to shine upon you, and give you peace.
give me patience for that one because Lord Almighty. But that's my first wood grip that I've actually put together with G10 and
Oh,
did the
cool.
carving on.
Yeah,
So, it's a lot of like I've had a lot of customers ask me, can you do this? And a lot
yeah,
of times I'm like, I don't know, let me see. And I'll go
right,
practice something
right,
and then I'll come back and be like, I think I can execute it.
right.
Let's try it.
Well, and if
So
you're a certain creative type, it's really gratifying to try these different things, right? And it's the more you do, the so I applaud your journey, because it'd be very easy to sit and get comfortable being one of the best thread artists in the world and just do that over and over. But you're right, you might get bored. But I think if you think about being a journeyman or journeywoman craftsman, that can do anything, that's true mastery, right? So like to have at least a fundamental grounding in all these skills, to me, is just sort of what I strive to do. And the people that I look up to and admire the most are extremely well-rounded rod builders. They're like that, right? So I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome that you're doing that. What any sneak peeks or previews of what's next? Like what were you thinking about at 2 a.m. last night? You got anything new and exciting coming for us?
um well, I've been pushing a bunch of people off until March to open up my books because I got so backlogged. So
Yeah.
There is an upcoming project, which it's going to be another EVA inlay, but
Okay.
I've been asked to make a sugar skull in the EVA inlay.
Of course you have. Why
And
wouldn't you?
I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do all that detail with it. And I started looking at some of the simpler ones. And then I said, you know what? Why can't I? Because I know how to cut this stuff. So I told him, I said, I can definitely go into that and try this. And I said, but you know, this isn't a cheap project. And he was like,
Right.
it's fine. But there's a couple other, I'm building a wedding gift later this year for an
Oh, don't
offshore.
spoil it in case they're listening.
They're not, I'm not going to name names or anything like
Okay.
that, but
Okay.
this one's going to be an amazing project because it's going to be kind of like they want or she wants the map kind of put into where they met with the coordinates and a bunch of other stuff. So it's
Interesting.
be fun.
Yeah, that's gonna make you use all the shots in the bag, isn't it? Yeah.
All the tricks and
Every
pull out
trick you
some
got.
more.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
but
That's fun though, right? Like that's when you, I don't know, when you're learning and it feels to, I don't know how you feel, but it feels to me like you learn something out of every one of these techniques you chase after, whether you succeed or fail. Hopefully you stick with it till you succeed, but you sort of never know when that's going to pay off, right? Like this one trick you learn here helps you solve a problem down the road here. That makes you better at doing this. And you see the connection between these three things. And you're like, oh, I know how to solve this thing I couldn't solve with this weave before. That's the fun part to me. It's kind of organic and original and like keeps you from getting bored with it, you know. And I think there must be some maker artist part in all of us that wants to be sort of needs that and kind of thirsts for it and is gratified by it. So it's fun to get to watch you on your journey and certainly you inspire a lot of other people. I know you've inspired me. We started talking about the lessons and I wouldn't let you talk because I was so fascinated in asking all these questions. But if you're interested in this stuff, you can go to threadcentral.net, spelled just like it sounds, thread like the wrapping thread, central.net. And on that page, you may be familiar with that because we had David Boyle on and there's visual wrap software on there. But there's a host of other resources. And if you go to products, you see all the things that Mary sells as well as Mary's courses, right? And so if you go to the products drop down box and click on Mary's courses, how many courses are there
I think I've got 17 or 18
now? Okay, yeah,
courses.
there's a lot, right?
I'm still trying to, I've got one that's still in editing that I just haven't been able to get caught up on. The goal was to do all of the patterns eventually and be
Yep,
able, that way somebody could literally just follow the steps for whichever pattern they wanted to do.
yep, yep. And the thing you'll learn, I promise you'll learn if you take these classes is there's sort of a decorative wraps basics class where you get the layout and the terminology and verbiage and all that stuff. And then you can go through and pick a wrap and she will teach you in detail every aspect of laying out the wrap, wrapping the wrap, closing the wrap if it's a closed wrap, ways to play with the colors, things to watch out for, and how to tie them off. I mean, it's literally very comprehensive classes. And you could literally, if you look at the pictures of the class that she's teaching, you're going to learn how to do that exact wrap, thread sizes, colors, passes, like everything. Super, super helpful, right? She's also got books and she's got all these tools and you got all of David's tools with the visual wrap and visual weave and the wrap sticks and all that kind of stuff. But beyond that, you know, the I guess the butt wrap layout or decorative wrap alignment jigs. You've got the double-sided duct tape, exactly like you used, the modified thread packing tool or mechanics pick, the circle templates, the very specific Sharpie paint pens that work. Like so, you know, don't sleep on that resource because there's a lot you can learn there. And the other thing is we should talk about your social media a little bit because I already mentioned that I follow you, but you're very active and you were telling me before that sort of was the genesis. All this was you and Wes starting the Southern Rod Builders group, right? So
Hmm.
you have that group, you still have the decorative studio, and then the decorative studio on Facebook, but you're also on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok with decorative studio. Am I missing anything?
Nope, that's pretty much it. I'm
Yeah.
Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. The YouTube
Okay.
channel's in its infancy. I'm pumping videos in there as fast as I can, but
Yeah.
growing. I'm trying to get it to
Well,
a
that's
thousand.
its own learning curve and figuring out how to, you know, efficiently produce and get that stuff out there too, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and
no one's going to accuse you of not having anything going on. Don't worry. We're not breathing down your neck. I will watch it once it's up, but I'm not trying to pressure you on that. Um, so, fascinating stuff, and you should definitely check it out because you can learn a lot. And I don't mean this to sound like any kind of arrogance or anything else, but I've learned a lot from the lessons, and I already knew what I was doing, and I was already getting completely satisfactory results. So to me, that says something about the clarity of your teaching and bringing just a slightly different, and it makes sense to me now, understanding how you're self-taught, just a real kind of easy, transparent, uncomplicated way to think about these things and make it work. It's just, you're very practical and pragmatic and down to earth, and it's less complicated and easier to understand. Maybe that's because it's both verbal and visual, but certainly the lessons are among the most thorough and easiest to follow I've ever seen. And so I compliment you on that. Um, so talk to me a little bit about what's it like to be a foundation outdoor group ambassador, right? So you have a pretty busy schedule. I mean, I see you at all the shows I go to with Anglers Resource. Like, talk to me a little bit about that schedule and what you've got on the docket for 2024. If somebody wants to come meet you and wants to see you at a show, can you talk a little bit about like what you're going to be out there doing?
Sure. So, getting brought on to be a brand ambassador for that Foundation Outdoor Group is just amazing. I was
Big
taken
deal.
aback.
Yeah.
I mean, even last year when American Tackle picked me up, I literally went to the hotel room after everything was said and done and like screamed. So I'm sorry to put whoever was on both sides because I was like, oh my God, because it was
She
like,
screamed in a good way, not in her stalker found
like
her in the
it was
hotel
just
when she
like,
thought she was alone way.
right. Somebody thought I
Right.
might have been murdered. Who knows? But I
Well,
was like,
your stalker's got a key to your hotel room. Last I checked, this is not sound defense, policy here.
but it's been awesome, and they've given me a lot of opportunities to do stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do prior
Yeah.
because of budget and everything. But
Hmm.
this year for what is scheduled currently, and then it's subject to change,
Sure.
is I'm going to be at the ICRBE this
Hmm.
weekend,
Right.
with the decorative studio and all that stuff, and
And
then
this episode may release after the actual ICRB. In fact, it probably will. So don't be mad at Mary. That's not her fault. That's our fault because we're sitting here just days before. But keep going. I'm sorry.
you're fine. Then I'm going to your event, Anglers Resource, and
Woohoo! April 12th through 14th, 2024. We're super excited to have you. That's going to be awesome.
it would be awesome to come back to the party barn again. It was fun
Let's
last.
go. Donnie
Yeah.
and Sally Paul's Party Barn. Whoop,
Hmm.
whoop. It's a good
I
time.
and then iCast is the next one after that,
Yeah. And that'll be
and
the third week of July down in Orlando.
which
Industry only event.
yeah,
Unfortunately, not everybody who's listening can get in. But you
unfortunately,
set up there and they have a big, beautiful booth. I don't know what foundation's gonna look like. I know the American Tackle booth was right across from us, and it's a big, beautiful booth. And you and a lot of other very talented artists are in there rapping and building the whole time, which is very cool. You always draw a big crowd, which is interesting. It's so fascinating to me that in a fishing industry, and ICAST is nothing but fishing and fishing lifestyle related stuff. There's still a ton of people that stop that are like hardcore fishermen. Sometimes even like the Elite Series tournament people, they're like, "What are you doing?" Like, "Building a rod. How do you build a rod?" It's like, dude, you're a pro bass angler. You don't know how to build a rod. Are you kidding me? Like, that's so surprising to me. But anyway, it's a highlight of the show. So if you happen to be at ICAST, come find the Foundation Outdoor Group or American Tackle or whoever's booth it is this year 2024 and check it out because she will you watch, there'll be a crowd, there always is.
it's
What are you
always
doing after
funny.
ICAST?
It's waiting on Mud Hole to release the advanced custom rod building classes
Okay.
again,
Yeah.
because I'll be back at those at that point, not sure when.
Yeah.
And there's been a couple other things that have been kind of up in the air, so that maybe 2 or 3 more events this year. Just kind of waiting for all.
Awesome.
This beginning of the year is really chaotic for them because they got to go to China and all over the place, PCS and everything.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
obviously, when you get to the second part of the year, we'll actually get some stuff ironed out. I know
Right.
that they are wanting
Yeah,
me to go
I
up.
think they're at China Fish like right now or this next week. It's like it's very soon. Can't remember
Yeah,
exactly when it is.
yeah, because it's China and then PCS right behind it, and then
Yeah.
ICRBE basically, or no,
Yeah.
PCS is next week, isn't it? Anyway,
Yeah.
there's so much
Yeah.
going on.
It's the following week. Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah,
It is a
so
lot going on. I'm
it's
sort of
a
glad you
lot.
feel this way because my head is spinning. I feel I've been home like 2 nights since the holidays, and it's like I know I'm looking at my calendar. I know it's going to end, but it feels like it's not going to end right now. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't enjoying it because it is a lot of fun and getting to be immersed in this stuff and all the people you meet and all the techniques you see and things you learn. I'm just always so fascinated about what everybody's doing. There's so many new rod builders in the industry or in the craft. And it's so interesting because, I feel like certain people like maybe my age and older we all came up a certain way. We learned from the same books. We went to some of the same events. We kind of can try to connect with people in our region. And we just almost sort of went down the same path and learning curve, almost to the point where you could even, and I'm not saying there's not varying levels of talent or diligence or hard work or anything else, but there was almost like a predictable curve. Like I'm consistently just absolutely blown away at how good some of the new builders are, right? And people have been building 2, 3, 4 years, and you're like, Mike Ward's been building like less than 3 years. I think it's like, what? Like I never would look at that guy's work. But again, he learned from you. He learned from Billy. He learned from David. He learned from, he's gone to all these events and learned from everybody he can. Obviously, he's very talented. Obviously, he works hard, but it gives me so much encouragement. The other thing that you always do that I love, and partly as a parent, partly as someone who wants to grow the industry, you've always got some kids around at your booth. And for whatever reason, you're just so good at being at drawing those kids in and being non-threatening to them. And for whatever reason, I've seen it with my own daughter. They just gravitate to you in a way they may not gravitate to, other people who are sitting down, a bunch of hairy-legged old men sitting down wrapping rods. Like, talk to me about that. Like you've done some stuff with kid events and all that as well.
Yeah, it was in 22. It was
Okay.
actually the first time that Jillian and I met, and
Mm-hmm.
I had been,
Jillian Mann, rapidly
Jillian,
becoming like Scarlett, a famous kid rod builder, Scarlett Wilhelm. Yeah.
yep. She walked up to the booth. I had just finished giving a demonstration on how to do
Mm-hmm.
2-pattern wraps or something,
Right.
and I had always brought an extra wrapper for people that wanted to sit down and learn.
You
And she
apparently
came up,
needed 6 or 8 extra wrappers at ICRBE last
oh,
year.
last year, yeah.
I'm in trouble because my daughter didn't get to finish a decorative wrap with you. I'm like, how is this my fault? I can't. Well, she had those other girls in the booth. It's like, well, share. There's plenty of, come on, Montessori kid, like get
There was
along.
7 kids in the booth last year, but
Yeah.
so
So Jared Taylor's kids were there.
yep,
Jillian was there. Scarlett was there. I think Molly James was there. I'm forgetting somebody, but yeah, it's a lot of
the
kids.
cowboy as we call him.
Cowboy. Yep. You're right. That's exactly what I was forgetting. Well, I'm
Um,
sure they're coming and bringing friends this year. I know my daughter's going to be looking for you at ICRBE, so I'll apologize in advance and be ready.
No worries. I'm already prepared this year because last year, so Jillian set the precedent basically. Hey, Mary School with kids sitting down and rapping because she spent 2 days there, and I
Yeah,
loved it.
she spent a long time there. Yeah.
And she was a little rock star.
Yeah.
And this past year, I got bombarded. I did not
Yeah.
expect the 7 kids to come into the booth, and
Oh, I
they're
think
all
it's
asking,
awesome.
can I learn to rap? Can I learn to rap? And I'm literally cutting projects off of
I
PVC
remember.
and trying, and we're in this little tent space, and it's me,
Right.
sweat, all these kids and their parents, and
Right.
I'm, oh, we can't do this again next year because they're literally they're wanting to learn so bad, they're rapping in their laps,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I only
Yeah.
have 2 rappers, and I
Right.
thought I gotta do better.
I
So
know where you can get another one if you need it. We'll pack everything we've got and bring it.
this year I got a 10 by 20 booth, and the
Atta
idea
girl.
is to get I've got a 16-foot long island that I'm going to pack like 6 to
Nice.
8 wrappers on, so everybody
There
is.
we go.
And
Perfect.
Steve won. Jared's bringing me a couple extra wrappers because I have
Okay.
4, and we're going to have some on the backside too, just in,
Okay.
because I was like, I have enough room for the 7 kids that I expect to come back,
Right.
and Lord, let's hope it doesn't go past that. But if it does, then I know I just end up talking to
Right.
Tom, going, "Hey, can I have
Then
half
then
the
then we
show
need to
just for
start selling
tables?"
sponsorships or something. Yeah, this needs to be
Right?
the future rod building center of America, moderated by Mary and Wes Christie, and well,
Right.
maybe not a stalker. Maybe you get a different partner. But
But
yeah, no, that's
I,
awesome.
I don't
Hey, I
even
think that's
know.
really exciting. Like I've never seen so many kids at any of these events, and I've been going to a lot of events for a lot of years. Never any young folks, and so I think that's so neat. And the thing is so cool about Jillian, her mom, Meg, that like they rap together. They're working. I got an email from them this week about ICRBE and they're sitting down and rapping together. And I just think that's so cool and so fun. And imagine starting at that age and getting the kind of tutelage she's getting from you. Like, oh my gosh, like she'll probably like land on the moon, the equivalent of rod building or something. They all will. Like, what an advantage. I think it's fascinating. Maybe there's a future Gary Loomis or something in this group of kids that you're teaching, or I don't know, someone who's going to change the industry. I'm sort of excited by the prospect of it.
Well, even Jared's kids, because I gave them all like homework, and I said, because they
Yeah.
came back to my house in September, I had a little reunion with all of
Yep.
them, and they were anything that was in the shop that they had questions about. We were all just jumping over it, like showing them marbling, feather inlays, trying to show
No,
them
that's awesome.
weaves, custom grips. If they had questions, we were there to answer it. And those kids, you know how kids' attention level,
Yeah.
you know, it it comes and goes. But they were in the shop 90% of the time.
Yeah,
The rest
it's awesome.
taking breaks, running around doing, other stuff. But 90% of the time they were in here hard. This place was packed. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But I gave them homework and said, come back to the show with a built rod.
Here we go.
And we're all doing Disney themed rods. So that's the reason
Oh,
on Elsa and Alice, and Jared's two boys have got theirs, which his two kids, those two boys, oh my,
yeah. They're good
they're like
boys. They're good
prodigies.
boys. Yeah.
They're amazing kids, and the work is just, I can't wait
Yeah.
to see their rods. She just did wood burning this year all by herself. She's
That's crazy.
burning
Yeah.
on cork. So I'm really eager to see what these kids bring back to the show.
Well, yeah, it's amazing when you take a creative kid and you sort of fan those flames a little bit and don't tell them they can't do it. And and of course they need supervision with some tools and chemicals and equipment and all that, but like they're capable of a lot. We were at the beach with one of my daughter's friends this past weekend, and the weather was just awful. And we couldn't swim, we couldn't do anything. And so it was like, well, and it's kind of the off season down there. So a lot of the tourist attractions would be open in the spring and summer, and the peak season aren't even open. It's like, well, you want to go to the shop and build a rod? And to my shock and surprise, they said yes. And so I took my daughter, who's built rods, thanks to Justine, Edward, and you, who she doesn't want to learn from me, but she learned from y'all. And this friend of hers, Catherine, who's in the 5th grade with her, and literally we built entire spinning rods in 2 days. And I was just shocked at Catherine's aptitude and how quickly she learned and how much fun she had with it. And she doesn't even fish frequently. Like she fishes a little bit and she's not anti, but it's like definitely we only fish when we go on vacation in Florida or a place near the water. It's not like someone whose whole world revolves around this, like maybe me or your husband, right? And so it's a reminder again how they're really the best students, right? Like she was easier to teach than anybody else I've ever taught, and like totally patient, like get mad when she messed up and was like willing to ask for help and was willing to say, stop, I want to do it. It's like, okay, all right, you can do it. And they turned out great products. So like, I hope if anyone's out there thinking about it, try it. Your kid might surprise you. They might be a faster learner. They certainly have younger eyes and less arthritic hands than some of us from all these years of wrapping and packing and everything else. So one of the things that's also interesting about you, and you would never say this, and to me, it's not, it's certainly not the lead or even in the top 25 of all your contributions and skills and everything. But we're seeing a real change where, and this is very welcome to me, we're seeing more and more ladies in the craft, right? And certainly you were one of the first that I met that had a social media presence and was out there with her work and teaching lessons and everything. Like if we've got women listening whose boyfriends, husbands, relatives, significant others have done this, or they've seen it or seen some of the social media content and they're thinking about it, like what advice would you give to other women to encourage them to get into this, since all y'all become much better rod builders than all us men in like half the time? Just do it. Would that be the advice?
Really, just do it. Just sit down and learn it. I have the Women's Rod Building Alliance group that I have tried to, I try to teach and get them to share. And because a lot of times the women that are interested, which a lot of the women I know are duos, they're working with their husband or their dad or somebody else. Right. But there's the standalone women that they just got into it because they loved it. And these women, I guess it's because of attention to detail, or because we can actually see a few more colors than most men can, that kind of thing. But they're pumping
There's something going on there. I agree.
They're doing amazing work right off the bat. And it's like, I see you. And I ran across another builder, Leanne Gardner, I think is her last name.
Okay.
She's like, I just found her. I don't even know how it happened, but I started looking through her pictures. She doesn't do anything remotely close to what I do. But her style is just gorgeous. It's very bright. It's very out there. She's marbling. She's doing dragon scales and all this.
I hope she listens to this podcast, because that's a high compliment.
It's gorgeous builds. And I flat out messaged her and I was like, you do amazing work. Cause like when I see people doing
She
stuff
must have
that
fallen out of her chair. That's awesome.
I don't even know if she knew who I was, but I was just like, this stuff's good, you know?
Yeah.
But it's really just sit down and try it. And I will tell, you know, it's a backwards way to get into it. But if you just want to learn how to do the fun stuff,
Yeah.
you know, make it a couples thing or with your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or
Right.
however it is, and
Right.
have them learn how to build the rod. You do the decorative stuff, and eventually you're both going to want to like
Yeah.
interchange and switch.
Crossover. Right. Yeah.
And you know, it works. And you know, a lot of those women that are building, they just sat down and just started doing it. So really,
Yeah.
it's just to find something that you think is really cool and try it, and
Yeah.
then build the rest of it if you want to. Even the
Yeah.
women's group, I tell them and say, hey, if you're not interested in building rods now, try some marbling on something. You can use
Yeah.
that on that
Yeah.
same technique outside of rod building, you know, on
Yeah, do
light
decorative things
stuff.
on bait nets. You'll sell the
Yep.
fire out of them, like, or
Mhm.
gaffs. I mean, it doesn't have to. Yeah, I guess that's still fishing related, but walking sticks. I don't know, wine glass stems.
Yep.
I've seen some cool stuff crossed over.
Yeah, pool sticks. I mean, it's a
Yeah, the
mat. You
pool
can take the
cues.
same concepts that we do in rod building, minus the
Yeah,
guides and real seats, and you cross over into a different thing, you
absolutely.
know, because it's really just sit down, do it, love it, try
Yeah,
something, figure out one little thing that you want to do. Hey, I like decorative wraps, then focus on that. Hey, I like
right.
marbling, then focus on that. Because
And I think it's so interesting where these different crafts have gone different places. Like you look at cues, and they've been doing inlace and abalone and all these different inlays and marquetry and stuff. That's old hat for them, right? Well,
yeah.
that's room for innovation in the rod building space, right?
Mhm.
Like knife makers, some of the stuff they're doing with kind of, you're mentioning the wood and G10, or I can't remember what material
Yeah.
some of these really very traditional knife scale materials, like, wow, that's never entered the rod building market. We've never thought about it, but it works great. Like there's a lot of lessons to be had there, and they've already got all the bonding and shaping and finishing and polishing like figured out, right?
Yeah. And
It's so
I
interesting
borrow
that
from them all
we're
the
into
time.
colored. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I borrow from them all the time. That's how
Yeah.
that wood handle came to be. I use the
Yeah.
G10. I was following knife guides on how they did all that stuff together.
Man, the knife makers, they've kind of got my attention on YouTube right now. Some of the anodization and some of the decorative metal things, embellishments that they're doing that are purely cosmetic and don't hurt function or corrosion resistance, change weight, do any of that kind of stuff. There's some pretty slick stuff out there.
Yeah.
And their understanding of metallurgy and different types of things and how they react and what they respond well to. It's fascinating stuff. There's also some real good. I think some of those guys that make really and gals that make really nice knife scales understand the contrast thing too, where they'll use end pieces or layers or different things that are just like so simple that it makes it pop, and you're like, man, how can I work that into a grip, or how can I
Hmm.
work that into a tie off wrap or a guide wrap? Because it's visually very appealing. I love this notion of sort of finding inspiration anywhere. One of the things, if I think about you as a builder, one of the things that pops immediately to mind is this notion of theme builds, right? And I would say one of the things you do so well is a thematically consistent rod from sort of like butt to tip in every aspect without overdoing it. And I know that's like subjective and that's my opinion, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder and all that stuff. But like clearly, this is something that you do. Like, was that just what grabbed your interest, or was that an effective sales technique, or was this what customers were asking you for? Like, how did you get so focused on, or was that a competition rod thing, or how did you get into the theme builds? Because it's definitely something you do really well.
Yeah, the theme builds actually came from the International Custom Rod Building Challenge.
Okay.
Because every year we had a theme that we had to fit
Okay.
into.
Yep.
And I realized very quickly when I had that leather and lace idea
Hmm.
that I wanted to try to create a concept from the butt all the way to the tip, because the
Yep.
challenge is we're working with a stick, and we're adding
Yeah.
thread to it. So how do I carry the Holt Buster, for instance? How do I carry that concept all the way to the tip? How do
Hmm.
I carry a sugar skull all the way to the tip? How do I make Elsa scream Frozen, all the way to the tip? And
Right.
that became something that I truly like. Those kind of rods are my, I love them, because it makes
Well, it
brain
shows. It shows in your work. Yeah.
brain really concentrate on how do I make this, the Phoenix rod that I'm
Mm.
in work in progress. I've got all of that fire detail and the Phoenix on the back end. So I have to make sure I don't cause them to contradict themselves when I go to put the grips with the wrap. I have to make sure the
Right.
wrap is
It has to
subtle
be
enough that
complementary and
it's
thematically
not,
consistent.
you
Yeah.
know,
Well, the
well, actually,
grips, I think I saw the final version of the grips. One's never sure with you. You might burn them up and make new ones, but I think I saw several iterations of those grips, and I think the last version looked really, really good. So I think I've seen the final grips, but yeah.
yeah. I haven't canceled them. They need a final sanding before they go to the
Okay.
show. So you'll see them at the show.
You heard it
But
here first, Phoenix. You're not canceled yet.
you're not canceled yet. No. She's got epoxy on her. She's done. She's ready. Like once I put epoxy on, it's very rare I cut it off. I
Okay.
did,
Yeah. Well, good. You
did
put
that
in too
one
much
time.
work at that point. I mean, cut it free CP even maybe. I don't know. Cut it pre tie off if you're going to cut it. I don't know.
Did I ever tell you how many times, like one wrap I did, how many times I cut that wrap off?
No, you told me you cut off like 100 times total, and that's like a shocking, staggering, painful number to me, like getting punched in the stomach. But tell me.
So back when I was an idiot and I should not have been doing this wrap at this point in time because I was like 8 wraps in. I decided I wanted to do the Predator, where I had to put
Okay.
the big fish with the bait ball, and there's no
Right, right.
for it. You just have to figure it out.
Yeah.
I cut that wrap off 15 times. And you know how
That's
long
funny. I
that
thought you said 15, like 1 5, like more than a dozen, less than 20. I thought you said 15.
I did say 15.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And you know how long that wrap was? Because this was on an Alua blank.
Oh, good gracious. So for y'all that don't know, Alua is the Hawaiian word for GT, giant trevally. And they
Yep.
have this whole system where they fish for them off the cliffs with either casting or pulley rigs, and they have bells on them. It's like a whole thing. It's a really cool fishery, actually, very unique and not for the faint of heart. But these are very large, long, big diameter blanks. They can be 14, 15 feet long. So, oh, I didn't realize 15 times. You know what? All I can say is I hope you're using Fuji thread because I got to pay for college. That's good. You just use all the thread you want. We'll make more.
Right. But what was funny was I finished the wrap, like that wrap was 28 inches long every single time I cut it. Okay. Cause I did the whole back end of it. Yeah. It was heartbreaking. That wrap taught me the most out of everything I've ever done though.
Well,
Because
yeah.
one of the reasons why I cut it was I got it to close right and everything was fine. But Mary was running out of black thread. And I just kept grabbing every black that I had because the background was black. But what's the problem with all the different brands of
They
black?
don't match. They're not
They
all
don't
black.
So when
Yeah.
we put epoxy on it, I had all this like striping and I was like, ugh. But we go to the show that next year after I gave the present. It was a Christmas present. We go to the show. We weren't posting or doing a booth or anything like that.
Okay.
I sat in on Mark's class and Mark was talking about how you could spiral the wraps to make it look like the fish or the flags were going around the wrap.
Right.
So
And
I
she's
got
talking about
home.
Mark Krause, the Munich
Yes.
rod man. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
I got home, Bill, I seriously cut that wrap off again because in my brain I went, I have to spiral it. And it was epoxied and already given. And I told it's my father-in-law, I said, Andy, I need the rod back. And he's like, why? And I said, are you
You're
planning on
not going to
fishing
believe
in the
this, but
next
I
2
just
weeks?
decided I'm not finished.
I'm not finished with it yet. And I did. I cut it
Oh,
off and I
man.
spiraled it, and then I was like, I'm done. I'm not touching it ever again.
Oh
So
my
to this
gosh.
day, I don't want to do the predator wrap. So if you ever
Oh
hear
God.
like jabbing at me, going, "Hey, you need to do the predator," and I'm like, no, because
Nope.
I
Never
have
again. Never
post-traumatic
again.
stress
I'm
syndrome.
totally burnt. I'm burnt out on the predator wrap. It's over forever.
But yeah, so one wrap I cut 16 times, and I tell people that all the time. I said, don't do that to yourselves. Don't cut it that many times.
Seriously.
But you know, you
Oh,
learn every
man.
time you cut it. Every time
Well,
you
you
cut it, you
do.
learn
You
something.
do. It's just a lot of time, right?
It is,
So,
but
and I appreciate you sharing that with us because we can actually see where you say, well, I cut this one, but then I added this +1 and dropped this and changed the shade and added this contrast. And now look at it, you're like, wow, okay, it really is a big difference. And I've learned some things from watching your mistakes. So I respect that you have enough confidence and security to be able to show them. And then please know that you're educating the rest of us. We're sort of watching and I'd like to think due to your excellent photos and clear instruction, we're learning something. I was just thinking about the Southern because I hadn't thought about it in a minute and the fact that that's sort of how we met originally and everything else. You started a very positive thing. Another thing you do really well is you take really good photos of your work, which is harder than you would think to do. It's actually can be really challenging. and you started the whole clear background on all photos kind of thing, which was a big learning for me personally. It's, oh, no wonder my photos stink. Is part of it is, you got to have an uncluttered background to make sure the eye is naturally drawn to the, like, any other pointers for people taking pictures of their work, or cataloging and adequately sort of recording each piece that they produce, because it's something you do really, really well.
So when I take photos, I actually have whiteboards. They were backers to IKEA cabinets that I never put on.
Okay.
And I use those as the background. I just put it wherever I want it. And
you need to get put on the IKEA Pro staff.
Right, for that.
Yeah. Who knows how many cabinets they just sold?
They got all the shelving, but don't put the backs on them.
That's right.
But
that's right.
I just lay it, and I tell people anything solid. It doesn't have to be white. White obviously bounces more bright colors, white back over it. In a lot of your professional photo shoots, the actual item is with a white background behind it.
Right.
And I literally will lay that down, and I'll get 2 or 3 lights that are pushing a bunch of color towards it. And that's when I start to take the photos. Now, every single photo is not going to come out great, because sometimes you have to do a little brightening. But when we do our editing, we don't want to make it look unrealistic. We want to be realistic,
Right. But just capture it accurate.
Just tweak it just a little,
Right.
Or the other best place to take it is outside.
Yeah.
On a cloudy day. Because the sunshine will make so many shadows in your stuff. It's really hard. I actually got a new phone, so the camera, I'm still trying to learn. So these last
I was going to ask you, are you shooting it on a phone, or do you have a real kind of
everything's on my cell phone. Everything's on my cell phone. Even the TikTok videos, all of that, it's all on my phone.
Yeah. Now I knew I didn't know about the stills. So, and this is a great chance for an Apple or Android endorsement. You want to go ahead and throw out there what phone you're using? And
I just got the S24 Ultra, so
that's a Galaxy by Samsung.
Yep, it's supposed to be the best
so there you go,
camera.
Samsung. You want to sponsor Revolution in Rod Building in the States? You no better ambassador right here than this young lady, Mary McIntyre Christy, and ThreadCentral.net and the Decorative Studio. Come on, show up, give her a free phone. It's the least you can do. Seriously, she's raising the next generation of S24, Ultra users right now at ICRV this weekend. Where's her royalties? Come on.
Oh, but even with that camera, it's got the phone has AI integrated into it, so it tries to do things that I'm like, no, don't do that
for you. Yeah.
And I keep telling it to stop. Like the Elsa grips, the photo I took of it, that blue almost looked royal, and that's not the color of those grips.
Yeah. Oh, really?
They're turquoise. They're a little bit like, well, not turquoise. They're kind of like a sky, like a neon kind of blue. It's whatever, but they're not that navy color that popped in there. And
they did look kind of royal on the photos.
Yeah. And I could not get it back to true color. And I finally just gave up. But I was like, in the video, it does it to the true colors, but for some reason the camera wants to make it down. But the biggest thing is put up 1 or 2 lights on your canvas, your stuff. Put a solid background, whether it's a poster board, piece of paper, it could be a piece of cloth. It's just something. We always take pictures on our wrappers because we get excited, we finish it, we do and we push it out to social media. But
it's just a bad background and a cluttered photo.
Everybody's going, where's Waldo? And going, hey, I see a pic. Hey, and they're not paying attention to your work. If you took the same photo and did exact same, took a picture with everything in the background and then did a solid, and you put it out at 2 different periods, your solid background would get more attention than the one where you had all the chaos on.
Interesting. I believe you. So you heard it here first, a rule, a bedrock rule for the Southern rod builders. Solid color background, people. Solid color background.
And they've got those photo editors now too, where you could drop it in there and it pulls out your background too.
Right.
So
where was that when I needed it? Right.
I know.
Now if they can if I need a photo editor that puts a couple more passes and maybe just straightens the very ends for me of the wraps at the very end, maybe that'd help a little bit. Samsung got that. I'm on the iPhone right now. Steve Jobs got nothing for me. Now I'm going to say I'm just following Mark's seminar and I'm wrapping them around the blank. Never mind that they both go the same direction. And there's not many straight lines in nature. That's why my wraps are not perfectly straight. I want to imitate Mother Nature. What do I know? I don't know better than creation. So all these rods, all these years, I'm curious, do you have a favorite or a favorite technique? Like,
I have a lot of favorites because every rod that I've done, like the sugar skulls are my babies because they're it began as an idea and then they turned into a
That was a
memorial
journey.
space.
That was like a
Yeah.
saga. Yeah.
Yeah. And the last two, the purple and pink one, she's a dedication to my grandfather and Wes's
Mhm.
grandfather that passed in 2020. And then the yellow one, which I got the, American Tackle Award for the microwave
Right.
People's Choice Award.
Right.
That was for my mother-in-law that passed. And so
Okay.
she's obviously that series I love, but the Phoenix is starting to turn into something that's a personal kind of um not really a vendetta, but like a personal, what's the word I'm looking for that? Hold on. That's a personal reminder to never give up, to
Okay.
always keep going kind of
Yep.
thing. And last year's the one I put in the international challenge and didn't make it in top 10, but the whole koi turning into the golden dragon, the Chinese
Yeah, that was cool, Rod. Yeah.
that one taught me that, that was the first time I ever worked with snake skin, because prior to that I was petrified of, I don't like snakes. I didn't even work with the dead skin. I
You
was just
you and
like,
my buddy Greg Hess, I keep meaning to build him a snakeskin rod because he hates him so much. It's like, dude, it's dead. It's over. It's not going to
I know.
hurt you.
Once you get over that whole thing, it's like, okay, this is cool to work with. But it was the
Yeah.
closest thing that I could think of that I could make it look like dragon scales
Yeah.
without actually
Yeah.
doing a dragon scale. And it turned out to be really cool. But I mean, right now, the Phoenix, the Sugar Skulls, and Elsa, I really love
Yeah.
Alice too, because they all have their quirks,
Right.
So
Yeah.
there's not really a rod I've built that I've hated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And I envy you that because I've built several.
But yeah,
But it's fascinating. I love watching you work. I really appreciate your creativity. We're very fortunate that you choose to share so much of it. You're sort of like the studio is always open and we can always learn. And then just I have profound respect for you as a person and rod builder, and just really appreciate everything you do, not just for my daughter, but for the kids at the show, other builders representing so well a brand, in the industry, and certainly a huge brand in Foundation Outdoor Group, and just so cool to watch you work. I honestly can't wait to see what you do next. Now I'm really intrigued to see like what the status or state of the Phoenix is, because now that I think about it, the last I think I saw was grips. So I'm fascinated to see where you took it next, and I hope you never lose sight of the fact that you're always inspiring people, including old dogs like me. So you're certainly an artist and an artistic force and an inspiration. So I hope you keep it up, and thanks so much for all you do for the community.
thank you. That means a lot. Like, you're gonna have me over here going, ah.
Well, no, I mean it. It's awesome. It's the older you get, the more you understand what you're good at and what you're not good at, and the more you appreciate when you see people that just are kind of unique with that creative energy and are just always coming up with something new and just always seem to have a different take on it. That is like an aha moment for me. And certainly you've done that a lot of times. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
I'm excited. I mean, I have no idea. I know I've got a few projects in line, but I really just sitting here looking at all these rods spinning while they're drying and the ones on the roll. Like, yeah, I'm kind of excited to see what else Alice decides to do too.
Well, we'll be anxiously waiting and watching, and you can watch too at the Decorative Studio on all the platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, as well as checking out threadcentral.net. And again, there's value in these. There's a reason why you'll see some things on threadcentral.net that you don't see in standard rod building catalogs or anything else. They're not offering you a bunch of stuff you can already get somewhere else. What she's offering you is kind of a personally experienced based, specifically curated set of sort of, I don't know, odds and ends and gap fillers that are very useful to have if you want to do this kind of work. And like I said, you can absolutely trust implicitly anything you buy from there, and that's why I keep going back. So Mary, such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and thank Wes, for working late or moving his schedule or whatever he did to enable us, and thank the grandparents for looking after the knuckleheads. And I will look forward to seeing all of you shortly in Winston-Salem at ICRBE.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a blast, and I will see you in a couple days.
Awesome. And if you guys are there, please come see me at the Anglers Resource booth. Come see Mary at the Foundation Outdoor booth or in her booth. and tell her how inspired you are by her work. She's super humble and probably needs to be reminded of it from time to time. So for those of you we see at our ICRB, we're looking forward to it. And for the rest of you, thank you so much for joining us one more time on the Mastering Rod Building podcast. And please download, like, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast content. We'll see you next time. Say goodbye, Alice.
Bye.
That's going to wrap it up for this week. But if you'd like to be notified as soon as all new podcasts are released, just text the word fishing to 587-317-6099. We'll add you to our email list so you can stay up to date. Thanks for listening.